Sri has been known in the market. Has been a very enterprising personality in the people supply chain management and also in HR management. In fact, Sri has been in the industry more than 3 decades. Has been working for companies like Britannia, CA Technologies, and GE, Toyota, and DXC. In DXC, managed the global portfolio of role that he has played as managing director and also like country head. And currently he's with EY as a global talent and engagement service leader for EY GDS. Sri is known for people supply chain management and building excellence. Wherever he stayed, he has really brought in phenomenal excellence in building workforce management and people supply chain management model and strategies. And in EY, he has brought in gig model, which is something that is really great learning for the rest of the industries, which he is going to cover. And business transformations, HR, of course, has been expertised in Six Sigma, PCMM, TQM, and also COPC. And very importantly, Sri has been featured as one of the top 10 influencers in 2020 as per the GWFM's research. There are only 10 that you could find in the global industry, where Sri is one of them, where he has contributed a lot to the community and also to the industry, brought in tremendous amount of supply chain management best strategies and best practices, and is one of the influencers in the organization, also influences in the community, also in the industry. It gives us a great pleasure having you with us again, Sri. With this, I give the control to you. Give me a minute.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you very much. First of all, for inviting me. Dr. Shiva and Partha has been good friend for almost a decade or more. I remember when they started WFM. Thank you again for inviting me. I'll be with you guys for next 30 to 40 minutes, and hope all of you are keeping yourself safe and healthy in unprecedented time of pandemic. And please continue to be wearing mask and maintaining social distance and ensure that all you are safe. With that, I would like to get into the topic of the day, the workforce analytics. Like Shiva mentioned, in my 3 decades, one of the topic I passionately pursued and did a lot of research over the especially last 2 decades, is on workforce analytics. In fact, I don't know how many of you know late Mahalingam Mali, who was NIPM chairman at some point. I think maybe 3 or 4 chairmanship back, he was the chairman when he was with the Symphony. I don't remember exactly. So that's the time he and me developed a workforce analytics curriculum for HR community. I remember facilitating that workshop 10 years back. I also had a chance when I was in US to develop workforce analytics curriculum for Stony Brook University in US in Long Island, New York. So I passionately pursued my research and my passion around workforce analytics. Next to 30 minutes, I'll be sharing what I learned, what kind of workforce analytics platform I built and implemented in organization in last 10 years, and which I continue to do in my current organization in EY also. So the few topics I would like to cover as part of the workforce analytics is basically, one, what is workforce analytics, a kind of a background and set the stage. Why workforce analytics is important today, and how do you drive this in an organization? The second one, I would like to see how workforce analytics in the context of people supply chain management. Like Shiva mentioned, prior to joining EY, I was the global head of people supply chain management, reported to Mike Lawrie, who was the CEO and chairman of DXC, which is a merger of Computer Science Corporation and HP. And that we had a unique journey where we split the talent function or HR function into 2. One, the people supply chain management, another one is traditional talent. And both of us as leaders reported to CEO. And I also was responsible delivery organization in India. I could implement many of the aspect of people supply chain management in the delivery organization. And in my current role in EY, I continue to do both talent and people supply chain management, as well as delivery for corporate functions like talent shared services, finance shared services, sales, marketing, risk compliance, and so on and so forth. Then I would like to introduce a topic called labor economics. I'm very sure many of you are practicing people supply chain management, workforce managers, very familiar about labor economics, but I want to give my perspectives on labor economics and how labor economics drives workforce analytics, and what is the relationship of workforce analytics to the business performance of the organization, like top line revenue, margins, customer experience, and cash flow. Then these are a kind of an introduction. Then I would like to switch to data lake. Without a data lake, you cannot deliver workforce analytics in full scope and depth and width. How do you build a data analytics? In EY, we built a data analytics platform. When I was in DXC also, I built that platform. And we had entire data analytics team was sitting in Lithuania and half in India, and had excellent team. Now also I have a great team. Some of them are listening to this conversation. And workforce analytics, some examples and use cases I will give you. Unfortunately, I cannot share the data, so I mask the data when I present it. But depending on the time, how much I have, I'm very happy to share some of the use cases what we have developed. Again, Shiva, I'll also offer maybe later on, I'm ready to do 3-4 hours of session, really walk you through, guys, the use cases of workforce analytics, how it is put in business in a real time. With that, let me first set the stage for workforce analytics. So the role of workforce analytics is basically, let me move this. Basically three focus areas when you design workforce analytics or expectation from you. One is, if you look at a CHRO role or a head of workforce management, you are a function reporting to the corporate, heading a major function. So you are expected to show the business leaders what is the impact you are creating through heading that function using certain analytics. So how do you represent that as a functional head of workforce management or a chief of HR or a CHRO? How much you are impacting the business through function? Can you explain? That's what business will ask you. And how can you do that for workforce analytics? The second one is, you are a CEO's direct report or a business leader's direct report. You need to demonstrate to the business leader that you are driving business benefits through workforce analytics. You are impacting revenue, you are impacting margin, you are impacting customer experience and cash flow. So in my last 10 to 15 years, I was CHR of Britannia. I was in CA Computer Associates and CSC and DXC. There, I have to show constantly the impact I am bringing to the business through analytics. In fact, I always say in my organization, the business of HR or business of workforce management is business. You can say any number of analytics you are responsible, like cycle time in hiring, cost of labor, retention. But at the end of the day, these analytics are useless unless you show the relationship to revenue, operating income, and customer experience. These analytics are not useful. So any analytics as a report of CEO in workforce, you need to show how much it is impacting the business. The third one is, you are a general manager heading a function with a budget. So in here, you need to show your budget is spent wisely and you have return on investment on this budget to the CFO. CFO will ask you, you are taking money every year. What's the return you are giving to organization? So all these three questions, as a business leader, as a CEO's direct report, as a general manager of a function, you need to show using workforce analytics and human capital management insight to the firm and its leaders and its investors. What's an impact you are bringing? That's the significance of workforce analytics. How can you do that? That's what I want to share it with you in the coming slides. So the legendary CEO of GE, and he has done a phenomenal work and created analytic framework for the organization, and he could read the workforce analytics like a balance sheet. A CFO reads balance sheet. He could read the workforce data and draw inference on them. That's a unique capability he had. And he always used to say, my right hand is not CFO. My right hand is the CHRO. At that time, Bill Konate was the CHRO. And Bill had a tremendous capability to represent workforce in terms of numbers. And Bill and Jack Welch used to read workforce reports like a balance sheet a CFO reads and draw inferences and conclusion. So what I'm going to share today is a capability. You can build it for your function where business leaders can read this as a balance sheet and draw inference. So one of the challenges every organization faces today, the human capital cost, especially service industry, professional services firm like EY, Deloitte, KPMG, or IT firms like Infosys, TCS, or Accenture, 60 to 80% of the total organization cost are human capital. But I agree, when I was in Britannia and Toyota, the human capital cost is only 6 to 7%. But HR functional cost is 1 to 2.5%. We call a terminology in business called percentage to TNR, total net revenue. What is the functional cost of talent? In industry, it's 1 to 2.5. But we as a talent professional need to measure the impact of 60 to 80% of human capital cost and the impact of functional cost of talent, which is 1 to 2.5%, through workforce analytics. The first one, the human capital cost 60 to 80%, is called labor economics in today in professional services firm and IT services, which I'll walk you through the construct of labor economics and how can influence that is what the challenge of workforce analytics. So this is a very excellent quote from Ram Charan. All of you are familiar with Ram Charan, who has written a beautiful book at the early years called Execution. Then he has written many books. One of the book is called Talent Masters, which is one of the recent books, maybe 4 or 5 years back he has written. There he has beautifully summarized the inability of many HR professionals and many HR organizations to really measure workforce data or workforce analytics and have a discipline in talent processes, whether you do annual performance appraisal, learning and development, discipline recruitment, and ability to measure it. So he summarized beautifully, if organizations managed money the way they managed people, they would be bankrupt. It's a very powerful statement. So when we manage money, every dollar we spend in organization, we take accountability and ensure that we have return on that. But when we spend any programs in talent or human resources, we don't show any accountability and understand return of investment on this spend. So how can we do that is the question Ram Charan is asking. That's the significance of workforce analytics. Now this is a beautiful picture, no explanation required. If you really look at in accounting languages, a tree with the fruits and leaves and branches is visible to us like profit and loss, liabilities, cash, assets. But the roots are which nourishes the tree is human capital and labor economics. That's what I want to show. If you know how to nourish an organizational balance sheet using workforce analytics and labor economics, you can make a huge differences. Today, thanks to digital technology and data sciences, you can do that. Every dollar you spend, every process you do in talent, you can measure it, the impact you are generating to employee experiences, profit, cash flow, and everything you can measure. The challenge of human capital measurements or the challenge of workforce analytics is how do you really measure it? How do you predict it? How do you control it so that the business get benefit out of it? The work I have done last 10 years and continue to do in the organization which I work is giving visibility to business leaders, the roots which they need to focus on human capital and labor economics so they get a better return on investment in forms of fruits and leaves and branches. That analogy what you see in this picture. So that's a context for human capital measurements and human capital analytics. Then the challenges. So when you look at the challenges, there was a very interesting perspective that talent have tangible data and intangible data. Tangible data can be measured in Excel sheet like cycle time to hire, average cost of labor. Then you want to measure attrition. These are measured in Excel sheet in numbers or expressed in numerical. But there are a lot of things which is not expressed in numbers. Skills are not expressed in numbers. Performance, culture, employee experiences, employee opinion, perception, passion, energy. These are not measurable in numerical terms, but still you can measure it. So how do a human capital measurement system or analytics measures both tangible numerical data and intangible attributes like skill, leadership, passion, inertia, attitude, aptitude of workforce? And if we can do that, you are going to be more successful. The reason is, in 30 years back or 40 years back, an organizational assets are tangible assets like factories, like machineries, cash flow. Today, 70% of asset of an organization are intangible: leadership, culture, skills, brand. These are intangible assets. So if you really want to make an impact today in workforce analytics, you need to measure intangible assets along with the tangible assets. And how do you really learn how to measure culture, how to measure experience? And today in EY, we measure all these things. In fact, we measure more intangible than tangible. Tangible can be measured by anybody, but measuring intangible require techniques and technology to do that. That's what I want to share a little bit of that in the limited time allocated to me. Now, this is a famous quote. Those who are Six Sigma experts in this call, they could associate with this quote. If you cannot express in form of numbers, you cannot manage it, or you don't know, and you cannot control it. So your ability to control is, you need to know your phenomena in terms of numbers. Whether it's tangible numbers or intangible numbers, you need to know in terms of numbers. If you know in numbers, you can control it. And if you don't know the numbers, you cannot control it, then you will be in the mercy of chance. Today, business cannot be run in mercy of chance. It has to be controlled. It has to be managed. It has to be predicted. It has to be prescribed like a medicine. So that's what the objective of what you see in workforce analytics. So as part of the introduction, the last one, this is like Einstein mentioned very beautifully, not everything that can be counted counts, and not everything that counts can be counted. Beautiful quote. What is the meaning of this? In human capital or workforce management, we keep on measuring what we believe can be measured in Excel sheet or in numerical form. But this may not be important for business. What is important for business is very difficult to measure, and we seldom forget to measure. So one of the challenge of workforce analytics today, can you measure what is important for business? Or can you count what is important for business rather than counting what is easy to count? So that's the challenge we have today. And with that introduction, so far I covered the importance of workforce analytics, the data science and digital technology has enabled our measurement system in human capital management. You are not only measuring the KPIs in human capital or HR or workforce management, you need to show the correlation to the business metric like revenue, margin, customer satisfaction and cash flow, and total shareholders return in terms of stock price. You need to show the relationship of that. And when you do start measuring in talent, you are not only need to measure analytics in form of data, quantitative data, numerical data. You need to measure attributes. You need to measure intangible asset of an organization like leadership, culture, and everything. And your ability to do that is very, very important. So that's the first chapter I would like to narrate here. So Shiva, hope I'm still audible. And any questions, I don't know how to track the questions. You need to help me to read out the questions. So I'll ask the participants to challenge me with the questions, your comments and perspectives. So Shiva, you help me to read it out. I am happy to answer.
Sure. So Gandhan, I don't see any questions so far, and I already, indicated in the chat box, and
Okay.
we can hear you very clearly, and also video is also very much clear. I think we can go on. If there's any questions, I can definitely help you with that. And
Okay.
we thought that we'll keep the questions at the end so that we can
Okay, definitely. Okay.
That would be helpful,
But
Srikanth.
keep on posting questions, guys. I'm ready to take it, and challenge me also. And if you have different perspective, bring it. I want make this more interactive. Now, chapter 2 is people supply chain management. So let me give a context on people supply chain management. I was in Britannia as a CHRO when I was in US in Computer Associates. In 2011, I came back and headed in Britannia, reporting to Vinitha Bali as a Chief Human Resource Officer and CIO, Chief Information Officer. So as part of the Chief Information Officer's role, I implemented APO, Advanced Planning and Optimization. I don't know how many of you know that module, which focus on demand planning and supply network planning. That's a backbone of an FMCG company. And it talks about how do you really get your biscuits and your products to 3.5 million distributors across India and abroad through a material supply chain management. That's what I implemented an SAP APO module as part of CIO role in Britannia. And prior to that, I was working for Toyota, the Bidadi plant Toyota. I was one of the early talent leader. Set up the plan. Before that, I worked in Japan, Indonesia, and Taiwan to learn just in time, zero inventory, and Kanban and Toyota production system a lot. So these two was a great influencing factor for me. And when I was headhunted in Computer Science Corporation, now it's DXC, one of the reason I got the job is CSC was looking for a talent leader coming from material supply chain management, good appreciation of technology and talent to build a people supply chain management function for them. At that time, Bain and BCG and McKinsey was consulting them. And I joined, in fact, my interview was done by Bain, BCG, and McKinsey. And they challenged me to build a people supply chain management using material supply chain management as a construct. So I would like to share some of my experience in people supply chain management. Many of the people who are hearing today come from that background. You might have done an amazing job, but I want to challenge you with another perspective. Then I want to show how the labor economics fits into supply chain. Then I show the analytical framework around that. So as I mentioned, when I set up the people supply chain management in 2013, so 7 years or 8 years back, I was I did a lot of learning and literature study of how people supply chain management or workforce management of Accenture, IBM, Indian players are doing. Then I also want to challenge the organization by bringing learning from other domain like Toyota's car manufacturing, Uber. Shiva mentioned about my crowdsourcing platform called the Gig platform, which we built it in DXC. Now in EY, it's a very big one. So all this Unilever APO, advanced planning, Britannia's advanced planning and optimization, Amazon same day delivery, and P&G and Google open innovation. All these things really, Microsoft open innovation and P&G and Google innovation internship influenced me a lot to build a people supply chain management construct. So when we build the people supply chain management construct, this was a kind of a framework we used it. The left side is called demand planning. And the demand planning is how do you plan a demand through forecasting, which is a finance function, through workforce planning, which have strategic workforce planning, 2 years horizon, operational workforce planning, quarterly horizon, and tactical workforce planning, day-to-day horizon. Then how do you collect the demand? How do you uh, uh, do resource management or experience management? How do you recruit? How do you reskill, cross-skill people? All these are part of the people supply chain management. So when the black hat is inside the organization, it's called confirmed demand. When the black hat is outside the organization, it is forecasted demand. When the hat is inside the organization, you as a recruiters or resource managers get pressure to fill that because the organization is using revenue. The CEO, when I was in DXC, every week I have a presentation to CEO. What is the lost revenue because it is not fulfilled? The right side is a smiling face there. If the smiling face is sitting inside the organization as a bench or hired, waiting for a project is a cost to you. But that smiley face sit outside in a gig or a potential bench with a partner, it is not a cost to you. So the moment the smiley face sits inside in terms of fulfilled resources, but you are not getting revenue because you are not matched the resources to a demand. Then your immediate pressure is, how do I put a hat to the demand so that I started getting revenue? So left side is called revenue per employee, when the black hat represents revenue per employee and the smiley faces represent cost per employee. And when it is met and optimized, it's called profitability per employee. The entire labor economics framework and workforce analytics is an algorithm, or it is an algorithm. It's not a workflow. It's an algorithm based model. How can I forecast a demand in the left side? How can I nurture a supply in the right side? As the demand moves closer to the organization, the supply moves closer to the organization. And I don't have a bench like a Toyota had a zero bench. The moment I get confirmation, I trigger an onboarding. And within 48 hours, the black hat and the smiley face come together and I start getting revenue. That revenue margin should be 20% or 30% as your aspiration of the firm. And how do you do that is called a labor economics. And today, modern workforce analytics, I will argue, should be centered around labor economics. And you cannot have a workforce analytics which talk about cycle time to hire, cost of labor, without understanding labor economics. So one of the big recommendation I will do it to you, I have done a lot of research, written few white papers and created some methodology around this, is your workforce analytics should be around people supply chain management predominantly, and it should be around labor economics. And one and only metric a CHRO or workforce management head responsible is called profitability per employee, especially in IT services firm and professional services firm. And that is what you need to do it. And that's a good quote. It is not the organization which are competing. It is the people supply chain management that are. When I compete with the Accenture or IBM or Deloitte or KPMG or any organization, I'm not competing with them, but I'm competing with their supply chain construct. That's what we need to build it as an organization. So the people supply chain management construct have, as I mentioned, forecasting, workforce planning, demand management, experience management, talent acquisition, onboarding, with workforce optimization focused on profitability per employee as a metric, and your ability to build a labor economics framework. And I will send you an article. If you want to Google it, you can find it. The one metric a CHRO should know is profitability per employee. McKinsey has written. So they have done a lot of analytics on profitability per employee, and they found a knowledge economy, and certain organization, their profitability per employee and revenue per employee is higher than certain companies. And based on a research, we work on a concept called profitability per employee, which is a derivative of revenue per employee and cost per employee. How do I increase revenue per employee? Through increasing volume of billability. For example, revenues, one employee revenue is a multiplication of rate card in professional service and IT services into billability. Your rate card is $20, you're billed at 50%. And if you can improve 60%, your revenue per employee goes up. If you can move into 70%, your revenue per employee further goes up. Then you get into 85% industry best. You are not able to further increase the billable volume. Then your challenge is how can I increase the rate card from $10 to $12. For that, customer should be willing to pay. How do you do that? By promotions or reskilling and cross-skilling is another challenge. Then can I move a person from run and maintain project to developmental project? Can I reskill a person from .NET today $10 per hour into ServiceNow $50 per hour, or a Java to Hybris, so that the revenue per employee can be improved? Is the economics today organizations are working on. We do a lot of work around that. Similarly, through pyramid construction, can I change the pyramid of an organization? Can I build, we call LPI, low pyramid index, or LCC, low cost center mix. For example, EY do today, we have low cost centers like Trivandrum, Cochin, and India itself low cost compared to other countries and everything. How do you really change the LCC mix? How do you continue to drive utilization and a lot of other leverage? Just of time, I'll skip it. Then this is the workforce analytics we work on. Using this framework, we need to really understand how can I improve profitability per employee every year through improving revenue per employee and reducing cost per position. Using an analytical framework is what you see in the slide. In order to do that, these are pyramid correction. How do you do pyramid correction? We'll talk in some other day. Interest of time, just watching my time. I'll skip all this slide. How do you really move people from bottom of the pyramid to the middle of the pyramid by controlling cost and improving revenue? And how do you move positions from top of the pyramid to the bottom of the pyramid through industrialization and re-engineering of the work and workplace every day? And how do you eliminate and automate bottom of the pyramid through automation is called churn of the pyramid to control the labor cost. And with that, if you want to do any labor economics in an organization, if you want to do advanced analytics, you cannot do it without data lake. In simple way, what is data lake? So in order to answer that, without data, you are just another person with an opinion. That's what industry will see. So you need to go with the data in meetings. And getting this data is not easy. You should have a data analytics framework. For that, you should have a data lake. What data lake does is pulling all the data from all the applications. You have SuccessFactors, Workday, Taleo, Excel sheet, you name it, all kind of application, financial application, time entry, skill database, your LinkedIn database, your external social media boards. Get all the data into data lake. Then you have to cleanse it, clean the data, normalize it, analyze it, and report it. So we have done a lot of work to build a data lake to get a tons of data which is tangible and intangible to understand the labor economics and workforce analytics. And when we do that, so labor, then after building the data, then how do you do workforce analytics? So these are some of the better questions. We are a company. So your challenge is how do you build a data lake to address this data, and how can you put a human factor in your analytics is very, very important. So when we do that, one of the things we have done it very carefully is, let me go back, is when you get all the analytics into data, cleanse it, normalize it, there are three kinds of analysis we need to do it beyond labor economics. One is, I call it as descriptive analytics. Can you describe your business? When you do descriptive analytics, what are you? How many? What is your diversity? What is your skill database? What is your people thinking about it? What is my pyramid? What is my average cost? These are called descriptive. You are describing your workforce in soft data and hard data, numerical data. We have created in UI more than 50 plus business insight dashboards, which is descriptive in nature, which just to describe, and you have to draw inference from that description. After that, you have to predict. And we have a lot of predictive techniques right from an offer is released. Will that person join? We have more predictability than today. Will employees stay for a longer time? What kind of an employee can be successful to? Then pay parity using AI prototype and diversity and inclusion prediction. We do a lot of predictivity after description. After predicting, you have to give prescriptive analytics. You have to give medicine. Like you go to a doctor, first doctor describe you. He will do a blood test. You will take your height, weight, BP. Then he will have a report and he will show you, Mr. Srikanth, you have a BP or your triglyceride is very high. Your age, your weight is underweight. So he describes me. Then he predicts. If the situation continue after 5 years or after a few years, high probability of you getting heart attack or kidney failure. That is prediction using data. So we can do predictive techniques are there available. Then doctor will prescribe medicine and lifestyle to you. Similarly, the workforce analytics person ability. I know Prasanna, who is in this call, he's my workforce analytics guy working for Vinu and Srihari. So this is the model he developed. Maybe we should get him to talk to you guys some point of time. He will walk you through what are the tools and methodologies and data science he used to describe, predict, and prescribe the workforce, and how can we really take to the next level of arts. So that's what, interest of time, I just want to quickly summarize there. Then another better questions we have. Yeah. So next better question is, how can a wealth of data create abundance of solutions for an organization is what we have done it. So we have a lot of dashboards. Again, Shiva, interest of time, I think we are closer to the time. These all dashboards is the Power BI dashboard. We have sentiment analysis. We use AI, ML, text analysis. A lot of things we do to describe, predict, and prescribe workforce analytics. And we do a lot of work around labor economics to improve profitability per employee. And we use supply chain management construct to drive labor economics. And these are the tools. I don't have time now to show some of the use cases, what we discussed, how pay parity, we have a gender pay parity. Every year we correct women's salary, which is not at par with men. And we do a lot of analytics analysis to do that. And we have an AI model algorithm for TR pay parity analytics. We have predictive models and a lot of things we do it around that. So the theme here is the talent with the data science and technology. We are in a better position to understand, predict, and control a talent phenomena. And we have to use both tangible and intangible data. We have to use people's supply chain management, construct of demand planning and supply network planning to understand labor economics. The one-on-one metric a CHRO or a workforce management head responsible is what do you call it as profitability per employee. And in order to do that, you should have a data lake strategy. And once you have a data lake strategy, you need to develop analytics to describe, predict, and prescribe a business problem. And today, um, a talent professionals are expected to more to know or read workforce analytics like a balance sheet. And the talent professional who can do that, who can help the organization to do that, are in very high demand, and that's going to be the future. I know with us half an hour handling such a vast topic is very difficult. I hope I did justice to you. And Shiva, I'm very happy to take any questions or comments or feedback.
Srikant, for very insightful presentation. I know that the topic is pretty vast, but you covered it so well and with concise manner. Great. I'm requesting all the participants to, you can raise your hand if you want to have a two-way conversation with Sri, and also you could have your questions here in the chat box. There's one question, Sri, someone is asking. They want to understand they know that person knows that EY has been very successful in observing gig talent, whereas in big organizations like like IBM or even Accenture or any of the organizations, even for example TCS, those organizations still have the reluctance to, because they still believe that FT model works, okay, and subcontracting model. Okay, so they're not still gone up to that level. I know that the maturity level is going to go, and very soon the gig is going to be big pool of the talent. I mean, what do you suggest that if any organization would want to take up this as a kind of pool, as a skill from the market? If you could show some light on that.
Definitely, sure. The concept of gig, I call it democratization of workplace, and the worker is going to be the future. And it's a maturing market. It's not matured. There are a lot of concerns from a gig till everybody want a permanent job. Then a lot of organizations also worried about their data privacy and commitment and culture and involvement of gig to this. So it's a two ways. The employees are not ready completely. The organization is not willing to do that. But we have experimented, not only in EY days, my earlier days also, I experienced a lot of work around gig. I think it's thanks to COVID in one way. Also, COVID is disastrous, but it also triggered or accelerated many technology and many adoption. And I see COVID will accelerate gig adoption. Today, depending on the company, the gig adoption is 1% to 10%. And again, when I say gig, including contingent labor or contract labor, today I put them in a bigger bucket called a gig. And companies like Accenture have up to 10%, including contingent labor, contract labor. But us also have contingent contract labor, but we are transitioning them into gig worker. My prediction is in next 2-3 years, this number will go up to 30%. The reason is more and more gig workers feel comfortable for a temporary job. I have seen people will accept it. They want that agility and flexibility, what freelancing provides us. The stigma around freelancing in certain culture will go away, and they will be proud to be called a gig rather than calling as I'm working for IBM or EY. They want to be called as gig. And organization will understand technology and protocols around terms and conditions of service to observe. So today in EY, we are not only doing gig, in private, we have public gigs, and we are also allowing our employees to be gig internally. So maybe this is a topic we can take it up sometime and share the best practice around that and how it is going to be evolving in the future.
I think that requires a good amount of time to discuss suddenly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's another question from Manila. They're asking that the WFM analytics has been evolving, and what is the future of WFM analytics, and how is this can be implemented from scratch, where organization is using the spreadsheets currently, not being automated. What is the strategy that you suggest?
Yeah, that's a great question. I really appreciate. First of all, workforce analytics is, if you ask me, a decade-old methodology. Companies like Google has invested very long for tangible and intangible measurements. Today, many organizations, I've done some research, more than 60% of the organization still doesn't have an ERP. Even if they have an ERP, enterprise resource application, they are not having a BW, business warehouse, or they are using enterprise application only for workflow. They are not using the data what it provides. And even if enterprise application is there, organizations have not cracked the analytical engine. And people who have analytical engine, they are not cracked the data lake. And the organization use data lake, they are not used machine learning and um, advanced AI, artificial intelligence into data lake to describe, predict, and prescribe insights. So this is going to be the problem. So sooner or later, organization who are working on Excel sheet to ERP or an application to a data warehouse to data lake to AI to ML engine need to migrate it. So don't get disappointed. I'm a strong believer. I started my data analytics journey in Excel sheet. I still remember how I used to calculate certain things. May not be 100% accurate, may not be 100% predictive tools, may not be there. Start there. There are small techniques you can do it with Excel sheet. Don't get disappointed. Even there are a lot of on-demand tools available today to do some analytics in AI and ML. So you need not buy a lot of tools. You need to know. You should have a good. Maybe I will share some of the articles on that. Without an ERP, without a warehouse, you can still create a infrastructure on demand for your. So my colleague Prasanna is telling Alteryx is a solution which is available on cloud. You can use it. So we can send you some recommendation. There are a lot of cloud applications available. Start the journey in a small way. Understand little bit. Show curiosity. Show the return on this. Ask them to invest slowly. So different organization and different maturity curve, but everybody have their own challenges. Start the journey small way. Convince business leaders the power of workforce analytics and Excel sheet and open source tools, and they will slowly invest. But you need to learn as talent professional. My learning started in Excel sheet, to be very frank. So that's a good starting point. Don't wait for big data lake and applications and A and ML engine. Start in Excel sheet. Maybe we should do a session on how can you do it in Excel sheet and open source tool.
Yeah, absolutely right. It's been a great discussion and great learning. And some of them are asking, would this PPT be available for?
Yeah. I need to mask some data. It had some data. I'll mask it and send it to you. Definitely. Yeah. And also I can send you tons of articles and other deck available in this. Definitely. This is one thing, Shiva, you should arrange a master class or certification class on workforce analytics and labor economics. It's a lot of it's a feature. Without this, a lot of people will be handicapped to be a professional in talent and workforce management arena. Yeah.
Certainly, yeah. Sri, in fact, we have a newsletter and also, we have a magazine which we are launching, and good to have your articles and the white papers and any publications which you are doing at maybe your organization, because this would reach a larger audience, to the worldwide audience. So good to have any insights or any articles which you would want to publish, or like you have it already. It's good to have.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. Thank you all, and stay safe and all the best.
Thank you so much, Sri, for taking your time. It's really a privilege and honor to have you. GWFM expresses deepest gratitude for your presence. It has been an immense learning for me and also rest of the audience who joined here. Looking forward to seeing you for the future events.
Thank you.
Thank you.